I had the absolute honor to talk to Gregg Kreutz, who did the art for the Suntup edition of Psycho. Now, you should know before you go any further that there are spoilers in this interview, tons and tons of spoilers. I think we try to not do spoilers right at the beginning, but it's Psycho. This book has been out since like 1959, the movie 1960. And I think I might have those dates. You could fact check me. I might be wrong. But the book's been out for a long time, so we're going to have to assume everybody's familiar with the story by now. But if you haven't read it or seen the movie and you don't know what the big twist is, then don't watch. I think you're going to have a lot more fun reading this book without knowing anything that happens. So no worries if you stop right now with this. But for the rest of you who know pretty much the story by heart, keep going. Some of this interview turns into the Jeff Terry Art Review Hour. I didn't intend for that to happen, but I just can't shut up. And Gregg Kreutz was so accommodating and so nice. I couldn't help but riff on some of these art pieces. Oh, and by the way, he shares a lot of his process work with us, and that was great. I loved seeing the sketches before they became the finals. He talks a lot about how that happened, what his decisions were. We do admit that it is a little dangerous to show those process pieces because people might say, oh, I prefer that. But art's subjective. I think there are different things that pull on us for different reasons. I think the final pieces are the best pieces, but there are some really interesting takes in some of those sketches, the raw sketches he created as he worked on this epic, iconic novel. But I hope you'll agree. Sit down and enjoy. Gregg Kreutz is a great guy. The art is phenomenal, and it's Suntup Editions. I mean, come on.
For once, I'm not talking to myself. It's time to go beyond the book and get over your shelf.
So thank you so much for doing this. I love these chats I have with the artists who bring these works to life. I used to be a book snob, and I used to only want the words. Give me what the author said. And then the first time I experienced an illustrated edition, I realized the magic. And I appreciate you sending those process sketches. I haven't had the opportunity to get a peek behind the curtain like that before.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? The only danger there is somebody might think, uh-oh, the process shot looks better than what we ended up with. We don't like that reaction, but it's a continuum. So
right. No, I know. And there are people that, yes, invariably, because art's so subjective, that something pulls in a different way. And maybe it's the rawness of the sketch. Maybe it's just that sort of unvarnished emotion that captures somebody in a way that the finished piece.
Exactly. And and by the way, is this this is the interview, is it?
Might as well. Yeah.
Are we legal to say stuff?
So let me start with the first question, at least. What was your reaction when Suntup approached you to do the art for Psycho?
I was thrilled, and it was so out of the blue. I still don't know how they found me or what their decision was based on, but I thought, yikes, this is going to be exciting. And I was there. I mean, I'm so old. I was there when Psycho premiered at age, I don't know what I was, 12 or 13 or something. So,
wow.
So it had a big impact on me. I was crazy about Hitchcock. And so it was right up my alley, this whole project. I thought, yeah, this is it.
Had you read the book?
I hadn't, and I didn't know. And I guess a lot of people don't know that the book has got one crucial difference from the movie. And have you read the book by now?
Yeah, I read it just before this. I'd seen the movie like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I read the book about a week ago. And yeah, so what's this crucial difference that I think I know what you're going to say?
That Norman Bates, instead of being a sort of handsome Hollywood, guy, is kind of dumpy and, overweight and, just unattractive guy, you'd have to say.
Right.
So Hitchcock, I guess wisely made a switch. And what's interesting is I've been reading some other interviews with Hitchcock and stuff, and he was pretty consistent. He wanted his villains to have nuance. He didn't really like somebody twirling their mustaches or just being completely evil. He liked to show that nuance. And I think aside from the marketing, I'm sure he figured he'd make more money with a handsome guy. But aside from that, I think it was more up his alley to have a charming, handsome guy be the killer than, uh-oh, did I give away too much?
Oh, you know what? Here's what I think. And I thought about this before we talked. There can't be spoilers in this. If you have not seen or read, although I will say that's the one thing I was so sad about. I knew the story before I read the book.
Yeah.
And that the one big twist is that Norman's doing it. And
yeah, that's right. And it's cleverly hidden in the book. And if you didn't know, but like you say, you're gonna have to hunt really hard to find somebody that doesn't know that secret.
Right.
But anyhow, so that I thought that was very Hitchcockian to make, aside, as I say, to make the villain kind of appealing. And at first it throws us off the scent a little bit, and also it was just makes for better drama, I think.
I think he also made Norman in the movie a little more cunning, because in the book, Norman is sort of reactive, and he's like, oh dear, I got to clean up this mess. I got to do this. And in the movie, there's a moment where where Anthony Perkins turns around the ledger, looks, oh, she's not from Toledo. She's not from Phoenix. And that's, and her name's different. And he puts two and two together, meaning like, maybe she deserves to be killed. Maybe she's running from, like, there's a judgment that takes place that doesn't seem to be in the book.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting nuance to it. Yeah, and I think Hitchcock himself, in reading these interviews with Truffaut, have you seen that? You can get a book of his interviews with Francois Truffaut, and
oh, very cool.
But he opens up about stuff, and I am struck by how his generous feelings about killers, Hitchcock's, he's often thinking, well, maybe they deserved it, kind of, the victims kind of.
Yes, and that is interesting, to go even further and say maybe the victims deserved it. But I think what makes a killer more terrifying is that they can be charming. They can be somebody you like. Like, how could somebody, because I can't fathom doing the things that these people do in these books. And therefore you can relate to somebody, but yet they have this side to them. And I think that makes that edge a lot sharper.
Yeah, boy, that is so true. And so then we're suddenly living in a world where things can be very dark below the surface, where we can't see them. And so that makes life much edgier, I think.
So you didn't know why Suntup tapped you to do this?
I still don't. I should just come out and ask, what was this? But they knew my work pretty well. The guy, Paul Suntup, who I ended up back and forth, he looked at a lot of the images, and he made suggestions and so on. I think he, by the way, something you said earlier was that there's something exciting about raw pictures that are really unvarnished, and especially for action pictures, I think, or pictures that are depicting action, if they're too refined and resolved, they don't quite communicate action. So he nudged me towards that kind of thinking, I would say.
I was watching you instruct a class on painting a portrait from from life. It's on YouTube. I'm fascinated by those things, and if anybody else watching this interview, maybe I'll link to them in the description. But where this woman is sitting there and you're painting her, and you're talking about how you're trying to capture the motion, and to an untrained eye, to an observer, it's like, well, the woman's sitting there.
Yeah.
But the motion is the life moving through her, moving around her. And I thought that was really cool.
So interesting. Well, I'm glad you picked up on that because interestingly, it's something I'm getting even more obsessed with. And it could be just the twist of a neck or something, or anything that gets it out of passport photo is what I like. So somebody turning, that kind of thing.
It's like stored energy, that you could tell it's there.
And this is a little off topic, but there's a Anthony Van Dyke portrait. He did two portraits of this sitter back in whatever it was, 1650 or something. And in one portrait, the guy is just sitting there passively. And in the other one, Van Dyke has him rising up out of the chair and looking looking towards us, as if, who are you coming into my domain? Or,
Wow.
It's so much more alive because it's got that action feeling.
The feeling of almost moving, like you're catching somebody in motion or in between places, makes it feel like it's not just capturing a likeness, it's capturing the life.
Yeah, I think it's, and maybe you could even say that if the paint is active or if you're drawing the charcoal, so you can see the strokes, and that just adds to the excitement.
Yeah. So when you got the assignment and you're like, yes, I'm on board, did you then immediately read the book? Did you review?
Yeah, I sure did. And then and of course, then I realized that Norman Bates was different, and that seemed a little easier to illustrate, frankly. So I went with that idea, and so that's why that's how that ended up that way. But I jumped right in. Yeah, I went right in. And then, as I say, Paul, he was a fan of a little bit rawer treatment. So I went with that too,
So when you went through the process, did you created these sketches and then you offered them up as options before going into the final stage? Or?
Yeah, that's right. Because I got to pick which scene I wanted to illustrate, and I guess maybe they guided me a little bit. They wanted enough space between pictures so they weren't jammed up in the center or something. So with that as the guide, I sort of hunted for things that had visual excitement and stuff.
I had the same reaction as you when I first experienced Norman. I thought when I saw the movie, and again, I just watched it recently just to refresh my memory, but when I thought the thin man, the highly strung man, made sense as somebody who's anxious. I always picture somebody anxious as thin and high strung, and to get this guy who's sort of sedentary and a stone in his own life. I guess that fits where he hasn't moved out of this hotel. He hasn't moved on beyond his mother's dominion. I don't know. But I had the same reaction, and I could see arguments for either, but Hitchcock wanted to drive that suspense another notch. And I think that's why he there's a cop in the movie that's not in the book. He's an intense character, ratcheting things up even further, even earlier on. And
I think the movie is kind of bizarre too, aside from everything else. It's the structure is so odd, as is well known, again, spoiler alert, but that who seems to be the lead character dies not even the first third, and then you're left with people you don't know very well, and then at the end, that crazy long scene of the psychiatrist explaining why Norman does what he does. What other movie has that kind of exposition? It's just almost crazy that it works so well.
When you compare it to movies today, yes, there's no way a movie would sit on that scene with the psychiatrist revealing all of Norman Bates's quirks and impulses. That wouldn't be allowed. It'd be a quick cut, bam, bam, bam. We'd get a sense of it and we'd be out. But you're right.
When Psycho was released, he had that psychiatrist explaining how somebody could be this way. And now, of course, we wouldn't do that, but maybe we wouldn't do it because Psycho opened everybody up to the idea of there being this darker thing that's underneath us all. You know what I mean? Now it's a little bit of a given that that's there. So maybe that's why they won't do such things.
That is so true. That is so true. And that is one thing where I said I regretted that I didn't read the book blind, that I knew the big twist.
Yeah.
But also, I didn't read the book in the context or see the movie in the context of its time. And because it was the grandfather of the slasher film.
Yeah.
And nowadays, violence is so gratuitous and so explicit and so very illustrated that when you see that shower scene in the movie, it feels like an art house movie, but he's conveying the terror and the horror and the violence in a series almost of just still shots almost, but they're movie. But to the audience at the time, that had to be just like nothing they'd ever seen before.
Yeah.
So you're watching it now in 2023, you're losing that added contextual historic sort of feel.
Yeah, I think it just shook up, and I think it came out, I guess, 1960, but it was like right at the end of the sort of, stable, allegedly 50s kind of mentality, and it sort of blew it open a little bit, I imagine.
So let me open this up. So this is the sketch of Norman. What moment is this? Is he hearing somebody pull up? Is this?
Yeah, I that's right. So I guess, what's her name? Janet Leigh is pulling up in the driveway. So I had to give a feeling of something outside, light and stuff. And also I thought the idea of going, making the perspective a little bit weird, looking up and not distorted, but extreme, and then putting in taxidermy stuff. I just wanted to load it up with, the content of the guy.
Yeah. And is he in the parlor or is he in his house?
He's in, well, that's a good question. It's all coming back to me now. I guess he's in his house.
Yeah.
That's why I changed the sign placement. I sort of shifted that.
So here is.
So I guess this speaks for itself. So it's a little different, no, there's that Bates Motel sign lurking.
Yeah, no, because in the book he's reading books on the occult. He's reading books that Mother would not approve of, and he is a little caught off guard. That's what I love about this painting, is that he's in his world. He's entrenched in his world. He doesn't really want to be bothered and stirred out of the world. He's surrounded by dead things.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that bit of foreshadowing, the discussion about taxidermy, of course, preserving the dead and having a physical artifact of something dead.
Yeah.
Is definite foreshadowing.
So interesting. So you can see how fun it is. And yeah, I was so grateful all the way through. I thought this is a fascinating adventure.
And so looking at Norman and knowing that everybody thinks of Anthony Perkins.
Yeah, exactly.
When I opened up these files and I saw the art, I was so happy because I thought, this is the book. You're not illustrating the movie. The movie is its own illustration, but you have this book, and you're staying true to that. But it still had to be somewhat of a shift, because a lot of people, what a lot of people are expecting to see.
Yeah, exactly. And also the movie is so beautifully photographed and everything. I didn't want to look like I'm just copying their setup. So I tried to find stuff that was off center.
Now, did you use a model?
No, I just made him up sort of out of my imagination.
In all the sketches and everywhere, he's so consistent. I just didn't know if that was like somebody you had sit for this.
No. In fact, I think it would be a little awkward to say to somebody, you look like you might be a serial killer. Would you mind?
Yeah. Well, one thing we were talking about earlier with the motion, a couple of things about this. And it's so wild if you consider it with this taxidermy. The bird's in flight, it's frozen. It's not going to move because it's a stuffed dead thing. But his mouth is hanging open, and his hand looks like that one hand looks like it's either clutching or letting go of the book, or like just trying to maintain his spot while he considers something. And the way the eyes are, there's so much motion in the stillness.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you approve of that. That's great.
And that's why when I first saw it, I thought, oh, someone just pulled up, because of the whole
Yeah,
thought in this moment.
yeah, that's right. That was what was hoped for.
Another image that I thought was really, really good as far as getting motion, but to a different degree. And I'll start with the sketch, and this is the attack on Arbogast.
That particular incident was really a hard one to figure out, and this is early on, and I forget exactly why. For one thing, I couldn't figure out how the killer is up so high. I liked him being up high, for scariness, but he looks a little like he's been flying into the scene. But anyhow, I kind of like this one. Even, when I just looked at it freshly again, I thought, yeah, this one is pretty good.
Well, the thing with that is, with Norman's mental illness, with this ultra violent tendency, there's, again, most people wouldn't understand, can't relate to somebody who would do this. So giving somebody like that extra human or superhuman or supernatural qualities, I think, yeah, there could be a physical explanation about why this person is lunging and looking so flexible, such like a death rainbow there. There could be a physical explanation, but also it's getting at this indomitable force.
Yes. Oh, what a good thought. Yeah, I like that thinking. Interesting.
Yeah, and then when we look at the finished product, I hate saying product, but the finished piece, and in this one, it works in a different way. The sketch was very sort of getting at what it must feel like, and the final felt like probably what it maybe looked like, where this frenzied individual has lost sense of the senses and is just attacking.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, yeah, this was tricky, and I had a more finished, what we were talking about before. I put more finish into it, and Paul liked it better as rough and ready. Like I didn't even, I hadn't put the legs in yet of the poor victim, and I ended up doing that, and Paul liked it better without the legs. Like there's just chaos going on. So.
That is really interesting, because I thought there could be a number of explanations for that, but the symbolism is, it's a life getting cut short.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, good.
Fading out. He's already leaving sort of the world. It's doom for him. He's never going anywhere else, so his legs are gone. I mean, there's a lot of symbolism you could see after the fact. Not that I think seeing the legs would have been a bad thing, but
okay, good.
I like knowing that detail. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think
so. How do you walk it back? If he's seen something that's more finished, do you erase the legs?
No, he as I was painting, I would send in, I said, here it is at this point, and then so he was able to just use this earlier version, because I sent him a photograph of it that was finished, so I didn't have to go back and redo.
So there is no original of this anymore.
No,
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking, even as we talk, to add a version of this with legs, and I don't know if there's a way to show it to you, but
the emotion of this, and when I saw Norman bent over and thrusting with the knife, almost like he doesn't want to kill, or he's kind of a clumsy killer. He kind of goes with his oafish sort of presence in the book. And Arbogast obviously doesn't want to die, but he's not really putting up this big defense, and it's just sort of feels fated. Feels like it was destined that this sort of moment was going to happen.
Interesting. But yeah, that kind of thing, I think, is a real challenge, that kind of painting, because when the intensity and the movement, that's a little hard to communicate. By the way, I don't want to be name dropping, but this is just interesting that I have met Anthony Perkins. He used
Oh,
to
did you?
Yeah, he lived on my block over in West 20th Street or West 21st. And he lived down there, down the block with his wife, and he had a couple of kids. And this is way back. And very nice guy, mild-mannered. I wonder if he ever regretted taking this role, because it had to have affected what else he got cast in. I don't know.
See, that's the danger of getting a great actor in a breakout role and in that kind of character. That's it. You know, you're going to be you're going to be Norman Bates, and he did appear in the sequels.
Yeah.
And, but you know, it could be, yeah, there could be a level of regret, like that's all I'm going to be known for. Or it could be satisfying to say, not a lot of actors, you know, there are a lot of character actors out there that never get this sort of imprint.
Right. Yeah, I wonder. His dad, as I recall, was a famous actor, so he was sort of from that world. Maybe he shrugged it off either way. But
so, are you still in New York?
yeah, I'm right in on 17th Street near Union Square.
So when I saw the wonderful 5-minute documentary of you on the street painting.
Oh yeah, good. I'm so glad you saw that. Yeah.
And it struck me. It was posted 3 years ago. I don't know when it was filmed or whatever, but it was posted 3 years ago. So I assumed it was filmed 3 years ago. But 3 years ago was a different world.
I know. The pre-pandemic New York kind of thing. Is that what
it was?
You're thinking?
Yeah, it was posted May 14th, 2020. And everybody had just gone on remote in March of 2020. And I thought, okay, maybe it was filmed a little earlier.
Yeah,
but
it was a bit earlier. It might have been a year before that, because I'll get back to you on that. My daughter Lucy was the filmmaker. She did all
that's cool
and stuff, and she just did such a good job with that. But
yeah, it was wonderful, and the way that people came up to react, and respond, and your thoughts on the changing landscape, it broke my heart, because I thought, what must it be now? You know, the world is so different. And, you know, I think, you know, yeah, people of course are not in quarantine anymore, thank goodness, but it did change cities.
yeah, I think so. Something shifted here. And of course, we just had a little bit of a replay yesterday because of the smoke coming in, and there were a lot of people out there with masks, and I thought, oh no.
Yeah, that's those shots of an orange skyline are going all over. So there's so much to look at. And one thing I thought was really interesting was your basement preview series. Now I have 4 rough sketches and then the final, and I'd love to hear you talk through your thoughts on these. I think this shows a really incredible, interesting progression.
Yeah, well, this was, Paul guided this. I mean, he had a vision he wanted, and I guess he didn't really want such a narrative kind of picture. He kept pushing it to be simpler, and I think he was using the word portrait, just a portrait, like what the victim or what the girl sees when she comes down the stairs. But for a while there, I was trying to incorporate, other players in this little drama.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time Lila appears in the book in a different piece, but I think this is the only time we get to see her face.
Yeah.
In fact, I think a lot of your work has faces, but this is the most, well, Norman's face is very detailed. I'm trying to consider all the pieces together, but I think that's really this moment is like everything's hanging in the balance. Lila doesn't realize yet what Norman's done, what he's about to do, and there's just this, you could tell it's just this quiet right before.
Yeah, I know. And but as I say, I guess, the illustrator is really, he's hired by the person to, I mean, I shouldn't say it too strong, because they really cut me a lot of slack. They wanted me to do what I like to do, but at the same time, they didn't, they nudged it a lot. So I guess the next one, if it's accessible, is then, I think the next one is when she's turning on the light or pulling the light switch. And then I thought that would be kind of dramatic and exciting. Yeah, she's just lighting it and then able to see the swiveled around scary person. So this is I don't know which of those two I was excited about, but I guess
Well,
what do you think?
if we compare this to the other one, what I love about this is that this is the very next heartbeat where the curtain just drops and she realizes the peril and perhaps regretting all that stubborn, bullheaded, because she was starting to regret it in the book, some of her emotional response to finding her sister. That's all she wanted to do. And she was very mission driven and gung-ho about that, and very she's the force that propels the book. And in this moment, it's the horror of realizing that this is a lot deeper and more twisted than she perhaps anticipated.
Yeah, that's right. So it's quite a heavy moment. And then in the book, the skeleton is lying on the ground. So I tried to do that. But it's a little less scary if they're lying on the ground, I guess. So we didn't go with that.
Well, I think again, it's just one person's interpretation. And I guarantee that no matter what, the beauty of art, and whether it's a written word or an image, is that people are going to do exactly what I'm doing to more or less different degrees. And for me, it's like, this is sort of Norman's brain. It's rotten. It's
Interesting.
And there's a little sort of gleeful madness to the way you've captured the skull. It almost looks like a smile. So yeah, no, I think that's, and to think that this is what really gets me about this one is that the shoes, like, yes, wearing clothes, you could see somebody doing that. You're buried in clothes, and I guess, yes, you're buried in shoes. Although normally the bottom half of the casket, I don't ever remember looking, but anyway, the fact that this corpse still has shoes on, like it's going to be moving, is the most disturbing part of it for me.
That is interesting. I'm so glad you admire these shoes. Yeah, I remember liking them too, but yeah, what an interesting take on this. Well, yeah, I like the way you're interested in this stuff. So.
Yeah, I think, and then of course the final sketch being what ultimately informs the final piece.
Yeah, and I think this one, the final piece, I make it even more portrait. I think that was Paul's influence. He really wanted it to look like a formal portrait of this hideous event. So that's what I sort of aimed for. And by the way, I happen to have, at that time, I had a skull in the studio. It's sort of I should say a plaster skull, but anyhow, that was the model for this. And I added the eyeballs just for extra something.
And okay, and the scarf is cool. What I think is really interesting about going for a portrait, and my reaction to all the work as I saw it, in the art that was sent to me by Rebecca, the other ones felt very in the moment of the book, and this one felt like a little more editorial, in that, what do we do when we get portraits painted? We're preserving life. We are preserving, like you've done with capturing the still stillness, but also the motion. And this is the same thing. This is like another level of preservation. Like you could see Norman hanging this up thinking, oh, it's a recent photo of mother.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah. And I for me, that was really cool. I think that now you have the original of this, I'm sure. Are you going to sell the originals?
I sure would. I haven't done anything towards that, but maybe I'll yeah, here's the originals on the easel over here. I don't know if you can see. Whoops. Where is it? Are you sort of seeing it?
Oh,
No.
that is so cool. Yeah.
Is that in focus? And you know. Anyhow, but you know, and it occurred to me too that while you were, you know, pursuing this, it might be that since the scene in the book is so well described and scary, and you know, he put a lot of brilliance into that scene, for me to depict his stuff is a little redundant. You know what I mean? Somehow, maybe that's a thing about illustration. You don't want to just fill in all the blank, or there aren't any blanks. So in a way, this is a little, I think maybe Paul was right. This has got more meaning, a little more resonance.
You know, I don't know if I would go that far, because I think there's value to either direction, but I did appreciate the way it struck, as far as nodding toward the idea of keeping up these appearances in his own mind. And you know, I think to me, having that person that corpse almost pose for the photo, or for the art, for the portrait, it almost gives the corpse a will. I don't know. There's a lot of that, you know. So have you done a lot of books before?
You know, not really. No, I've done a few. I've done I did a cover. There's I did a cover for a sort of pulp novel thing that I enjoyed doing, but illustration, I like illustration, and I really enjoyed this project, but I haven't done a lot of it.
I think that fits with a lot of what I hear from other artists who work with Suntup. They're not normally or exclusively illustrators. They're artists, and I think that when Suntup selects artists, your portfolio is all the vetting they need, and they see how that could fit the work they want lined up.
Yeah, I think that's how it works. So good for them. And of course, you know, I think illustration now is I don't know this too much firsthand, but I think it's a little bit in a different world. You know, illustrators in the 40s, 50s, even early 60s were, you know, dynamite, and you know, really. But you know, I think with computers and graphic stuff, I think they've faded off a little bit. Now there is still good stuff going on, I know, but
yeah, it is definitely. And then there's AI replacing a lot of things, and
AI. Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's old news, but yeah, I've seen examples where you could just say woman in a blue dress looking frightened, and you push a button and there she is, looking great, beautifully done.
It's frightening, but you know, it's interesting. Every time I see an AI piece, you get a sense that it's AI. You see it and you're like, there's something. And that's interesting, because you don't know where any image is generated from most of the time, unless you're looking at somebody's portfolio or whatever. But there's something soulless about it, that it just doesn't have that humanity.
I sure hope so. Let's hope that holds up. But maybe they can just, oh no, we'll just program more humanity into it and push a few more buttons.
And it's not just art. I mean, it's writing. It is music. There's a musician, Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, said songwriting is now, he goes, AI is going to wreck songwriting. People are just they're going to punch in again what they what they're looking for. They're going to get 7 options. They're going to like one of them. They're going to refine it, and it's taking all the songwriting away from the.
Yeah, I tell you, That, yeah, I've been hearing stories that, yeah, they can, and somebody had a poem. They wanted to write a poem about growing up in Scotland, but they didn't want to put the energy in. So they just typed in poem about growing up in Scotland, and it was kind of good. It rhymed, it had meter and evoked, walking on the moors or whatever. And
Wow, that's scary. Then why do you then read a poem already written?
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
if you don't want to write it, but you want it, it exists. You can find it. And yeah, that's scary. So you sent me another photo, another image. Oh, before that, you sent one that I thought was interesting. And so obviously you had to make decisions on what, because it's a very thin book. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
thin.
exactly.
And if you load it up with too much art, yeah, it's gonna be not, the pacing is going to be lost. But this is one that I don't believe made it into a final, did it?
Yeah, it didn't, and I can't remember why, but it was an idea that Arbogast is double checking the guest book, obviously, and Norman's supposed to be looking a little worried about the situation. But I can't remember why this got nixed. It might have been me or it might have been Paul. I just can't remember, but
Yeah. And that's the thing that's rough, is that you have to almost choose among your children, because
yeah.
you got to pick something that makes it. And there's another one that didn't make it in that I thought was really interesting. And I really do want to share these things with people in this interview so that they can
Oh yeah.
also enjoy it.
I mean, I I was sort of just experimenting with stuff, and I thought this could be an exciting moment, or her anyhow. But first of all, it's not quite formatted for the vertical book.
Right. Right.
But I thought maybe a chapter heading or something, and
Yeah. I mean, and this is obviously the moment after he's caught in his library reading his occult books. He comes down in the rain. He's sort of like a child looking at an ant under a magnifying glass.
that's right. That is right. Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyhow, I was just caught up in this thing, and I was doing stuff that I sort of doubted it would ever make it to the finish line, but
I like that one too. And then you did one that's more of an epilogue. There are a couple more that were sort of emerging. So they're retrieving the cars out of the swamp.
yeah, again, that was sort of thinking that, yeah, like you say, an epilogue, because I think that is the final shot in the movie, isn't it? The car coming up out of the swamp, I think was.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't remember. I just saw it too, but I remember my reaction at the psychiatrist, and he's at the very end. Yeah, retrieving the cars. It's not something they detail in the book, other than, yeah, they found it and the money wasn't even wet, they say.
Oh, is that right? Interesting.
Yeah, because she leaves the money in the glove box in the book, and then Norman never sees it, never realizes it's there. And I thought that was an interesting detail in the book, to have it's to highlight that it's not even about the money. Like, money isn't even a factor.
Yeah, that is interesting.
It's sort of other things, most people are driven by those things. And then I was curious about this.
I hope you can tell that's a little fly on his
Okay. That's what it is. Oh, that's brilliant. Yes.
he's sort of looking at this fly.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. That would be a great sort of final, there's a frontispiece and maybe there's an end piece.
Yeah.
Where you have that. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's so cool. Really like that. So what is next for you? What will you be, what other projects are you taking on? And
I'm just painting away here. I don't have any commissions lurking that I know of, unless something pops up. But one thing I've been doing aside, I should mention this is I've written a novel that I've illustrated, and
That's so
and
cool.
I keep, I've done, it's got paintings in it and a lot of drawings. What I've got to do is start hustling it or sending it around and getting it going. But that's been a consuming project. Is this book, and it's called Nick Da Vinci Courtroom Artist, and so it's,
So is this a work of, this is a novel, a work of fiction?
yeah, it's a fiction novel, and it tracks this adventure that this courtroom artist has, that he gets involved in one of the cases and so on. So that's been the consuming thing, and I've used, some of the ideas from the Psycho thing interconnected with that book. So that's been a thing. And
That's really cool. So when did you start this project?
quite a while ago, it might be 10 years ago, and I've been nibbling at it, but I've reached the finish line. I've got all the illustrations in place. I wanted it also to have his drawing. He's an artist, he's a courtroom artist, but his drawings lead to the clues. You can see the drawings that give him the ideas of the clues that leads to the identity of the murderer, kind of thing. So
Well, that's really cool. I like that. I love the concept of it, and how art is, there's a lot sort of blended into that.
yeah, exactly. So I really put my heart and soul into that project. Strangely, I have a lot of trouble doing the next step, where you try to attract, customers or getting somebody to publish. So
Yeah. So your next step is to finding a home for it, a
yeah,
publisher.
that's it.
I mean, a
That's
lot of people do self-publishing on, print on demand on Amazon. You're not getting the same quality, of course, and it's always good to have an editor, look it over. Did you have an editor look at
I
yours?
did. I got a great editor who worked with
Oh,
on the prose, and so
yeah.
I'm happy with how that came out and so on. So, but I hear you that could be self-publishing is the way to go. More control and so on.
It's hard because there are a lot of authors who have to be their own marketing forces now. It's weird. Like the publishers just because the authors have access to media tools and things, like social media, that the publishers just say, all right, well, we're gonna let them carry that weight,
Yeah.
when it should be they have the marketing team, they push the book, and then the writer can focus on creating a new work.
Yeah, but and that's another, like AI, that your how many followers you've got. I've heard that even in acting, if you audition for a part, they'll say, by the way, how many followers do you have?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Because it's a business, and that's why a lot of Hollywood adapts books, because books already have an audience.
Yes.
So they could say, all right, I'm sure they've run the numbers. If this book sold 1 million copies, we can count on at least 20,000 people to watch this movie, and therefore they're crunching the numbers. And
Yeah, exactly.
and what's a shame is that the people who have all the followers, the influencers, aren't necessarily talented folks, but
Yeah.
they've done something well, and I'm not taking away from them, but it might not be a good acting skill that can apply to a movie.
Yeah, it's so true. So that you're rewarding stuff that may not be relevant to the whole thing. I don't know.
Right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today to walk through all this incredible art. I know I am looking forward to seeing. I haven't seen the final.
Yeah, me either, by the way. So I'm curious how it's going to look on
I can guarantee it's going to look wonderful. It's going to be printed letterpress, and it's going to be a gorgeous production, and it's a brilliant book, and your work in it adds that extra level that, to me, these illustrations are definite mood heighteners, and you feel like, I don't know, there's a certain magic to images and art, images and the written word coming together.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That is so nice of you to say, and I'm delighted to hear it. This was such a pleasure, I must say.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about these things. I think it means a lot to, at least to me, but also I know the fans get a total kick out of it. it's an iconic work.
Yeah, it could be, as we discussed, it was sort of, it may have culturally, it may have just blown things open in some wild way that like no other book.
The sort of what goes on behind closed doors, in the 50s, what happens in somebody's private home, we don't bring it out into the street. And this book dragged it out and said, this is what humans do.
Yeah, very powerful. All right, well, good. Well, thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
Pleasure, and we'll be in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Greg.